The rain poured down like bullets on the dark street as Emma Martinez hurried toward her old Honda Civic. Her nursing shift at St. Mary's Hospital had ended 3 hours late, and exhaustion weighed heavy on her shoulders. The parking garage echoed with the sound of her footsteps, each step bringing her closer to home and a hot shower. That's when she heard the groan. Emma stopped, listening carefully. There it was again, a low, pained sound coming from behind a concrete pillar. Her nursing instincts kicked in immediately. Someone was hurt, and badly. She found him crumpled against the cold wall, blood seeping through his expensive white shirt. The man looked to be in his early 30s, with dark hair and sharp features that would have been handsome if not for the pain etched across his face. His breathing was shallow, and Emma could see at least 2 bullet wounds in his chest. "Oh, my God," she whispered, dropping her purse and kneeling beside him. "Can you hear me?" The man's eyes fluttered open, revealing striking green irises that seemed to pierce right through her. He tried to speak, but only managed a weak cough that brought up blood. "Don't talk," Emma said, her training taking over. "I'm a nurse. I'm going to help you." She quickly assessed his injuries. The bullets had missed his heart, but he was losing blood fast. Without proper medical attention, he would die within the hour. Emma looked around the empty garage. No one else was there, and she couldn't hear any sirens approaching. "Listen to me," she said firmly, placing pressure on his wounds with her jacket. "I need to get you to a hospital. Can you walk?" The man shook his head weakly. Emma made a split-second decision that would change her life forever. She couldn't leave him here to die, and waiting for an ambulance might take too long. Her apartment was only 10 minutes away, and she had enough medical supplies there to stabilize him until she could figure out what to do next. "I'm going to help you to my car," she said. "This is going to hurt, but I need you to try to stay conscious." Getting him to her car was like trying to move a mountain. The man was tall and muscular, easily outweighing Emma by 60 pounds. But somehow, with determination she didn't know she possessed, she managed to half-carry, half-drag him to her vehicle. The drive to her apartment felt like the longest 10 minutes of her life. The man drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling words she couldn't understand. Emma kept talking to him, trying to keep him awake. "What's your name?" she asked, taking a sharp turn onto her street. "Marcus," he whispered so quietly she almost missed it. "Okay, Marcus, we're almost there. You're going to be fine." Emma's apartment was a modest 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an old building. Getting Marcus up 3 flights of stairs nearly killed them both, but somehow they made it. Emma cleared everything off her kitchen table and helped him lie down. For the next 4 hours, Emma worked like she was in the best trauma unit in the country. She cleaned his wounds, removed 1 bullet that was lodged close to the surface, and stitched him up with supplies from her well-stocked first aid kit. Marcus had passed out from the pain, which made her job easier, but also more terrifying. As dawn broke through her small kitchen window, Emma finally allowed herself to collapse into a chair. Marcus was stable, his breathing steady and strong. The color had returned to his face, and she was confident he would survive. That's when the reality of what she had done hit her. She had brought a stranger into her home, a stranger who had been shot multiple times. Emma didn't know anything about Marcus except his first name. He could be a criminal, a gang member, or worse. But looking at his peaceful face as he slept, she found it hard to believe he was dangerous. Emma made coffee and sat watching him, wondering what she should do next. She should probably call the police, but something held her back. Maybe it was the way he had looked at her with those green eyes, or maybe it was her natural instinct to protect her patients. Around noon, Marcus began to stir. His eyes opened slowly, and for a moment he looked confused about where he was. Then his gaze found Emma, and she saw something like relief cross his features. "You saved my life," he said, his voice stronger than it had been the night before. "You're a nurse," Emma replied. "It's what I do." Marcus tried to sit up but winced in pain. Emma quickly moved to help him, adjusting the pillows behind his back. "You shouldn't move too much yet," she warned. "Those stitches need time to heal." "I need to make a phone call," Marcus said urgently. "There are people who will be looking for me." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of people?" Marcus studied her face for a long moment, as if trying to decide how much to tell her. "The kind of people you don't want to meet," he said finally. Before Emma could ask what he meant, her apartment buzzer rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, and her heart began to race. The buzzer rang again, longer this time, more insistent. "Don't answer it," Marcus said, his voice tight with tension. But it was too late. Emma heard footsteps on the stairs outside her apartment, heavy boots that didn't belong to any of her neighbors. Someone was coming up, and from the sound of it, they weren't planning to wait for an invitation. Marcus tried to get up from the table, but his injuries made him move slowly. Emma could see panic in his eyes, the same look she had seen in trauma patients who knew their time was running out. "Emma," he said urgently, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, don't tell them anything about last night. Tell them you found me this morning. Unconscious outside your building. Can you do that?" "I don't understand," Emma said, but the fear in Marcus's voice was contagious. "Who's coming?" The footsteps stopped outside her door. Emma heard voices, low and threatening. Someone tried the door handle, and she was grateful she had remembered to lock it. Then came the knock, 3 sharp raps that seemed to echo through her small apartment like gunshots. "Open up," a gruff voice called from the other side. "Police." But something about the voice didn't sound right to Emma. It was too harsh, too demanding. Real police officers usually identified themselves properly and showed badges. Marcus grabbed her arm with surprising strength for someone who had been near death 12 hours earlier. "Remember what I told you," he whispered. "Found me this morning. That's all you know." Emma's mind was racing. She was a law-abiding citizen who had never been in trouble with the police in her life. But looking at Marcus, seeing the genuine fear in his eyes, she made another decision that surprised herself. "Okay," she whispered back. The knocking came again, louder and more aggressive this time. "We know you're in there," the voice called. "Open this door, or we'll open it for you." Emma took a deep breath and walked to the door, her hands shaking slightly. Through the peephole, she could see 3 men in dark suits. They looked more like mobsters from a movie than police officers. "What do you want?" she called through the door. "Ma'am, we're looking for someone who might be hurt. We have reason to believe he's in your building." Emma glanced back at Marcus, who was watching her with intense concentration. She could see he was preparing for whatever was about to happen, despite his injuries. "I haven't seen anyone," Emma called back. "But there's a man outside my building who looks like he might need help. I was just about to call 911. There was a moment of silence from the other side of the door. Emma could hear the men talking to each other in low voices, but she couldn't make out the words. "Ma'am, we need you to open this door," the voice said again. "This is police business." "Can I see some identification?" Emma asked, stalling for time. She heard Marcus moving behind her, probably trying to find a place to hide or a way to escape. But her apartment was small, and he was in no condition to run. The men outside were getting impatient. Emma could hear them discussing something, and she caught the words, "kick it in." That's when she realized these definitely weren't police officers. Real cops wouldn't threaten to break down her door without a warrant, especially not for a wellness check. Emma made a decision that she would question for weeks to come. Instead of opening the door, she turned the deadbolt and stepped away. "I'm calling the real police," she announced loudly. The response was immediate and terrifying. The door exploded inward as one of the men kicked it with tremendous force. The deadbolt held, but the door frame splintered, and Emma knew it wouldn't hold for long. Marcus was suddenly beside her, moving faster than she thought possible for someone with his injuries. "Back door," he said urgently. "Do you have a back door?" "Fire escape," Emma said, pointing toward her bedroom window. The front door took another massive hit, and this time the frame gave way completely. 3 large men in expensive suits burst into her apartment, and Emma got her first clear look at the people who had been hunting Marcus. They were not the kind of men she had ever encountered in her quiet, normal life. Everything about them screamed danger, from their cold eyes to the way they moved with predatory confidence. The leader, a man with graying temples and scars on his hands, looked around the apartment with the air of someone used to getting what he wanted. "Where is he?" the man asked Emma, his voice calm but threatening. "Where is who?" Emma replied, surprised by how steady her own voice sounded. The man smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Miss Martinez, we know Marcus Romano is here. We tracked the blood trail from the parking garage to this building. Now, you can make this easy on yourself and tell us where he is, or we can tear this place apart until we find him." Emma's heart was pounding so hard she was sure they could hear it. Marcus Romano. Now she had a last name to go with the man she had saved, but she still didn't know who he was or why these men wanted him so badly. "I don't know anyone named Marcus Romano," she said, trying to sound confused rather than terrified. One of the other men, a younger guy with dead eyes and a gun visible under his jacket, stepped toward Emma's bedroom. "Boss, I'll check the back." "Wait," the leader said, still watching Emma carefully. "Miss Martinez, you're a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. You finished your shift at 11:47 p.m. last night. You left the hospital at 2:15 a.m. Where did you go after that?" The fact that they knew so much about her movements made Emma's blood run cold. These men had been watching her, tracking her. But why? "I came home," she said. "I was tired." "And you didn't see anyone in the parking garage? No one who might have been hurt?" Emma forced herself to meet the man's eyes. "No, I didn't see anyone." The leader studied her for a long moment, and Emma had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her lie. But before he could respond, his phone rang. "What?" he answered harshly. Then his expression changed, becoming almost nervous. "Yes, sir. We're here now. No, we haven't found him yet." Emma couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but whatever the person was saying made all 3 men noticeably tense. "Yes, sir," the leader said again. "We understand. 20 minutes. He hung up and looked at his companions with an expression that might have been fear. "We need to find him now. Search everything." As the men began tearing apart her apartment, Emma realized that Marcus Romano was much more important than she had thought, and that she had just gotten herself involved in something far more dangerous than a simple gunshot wound. The 3 men worked through Emma's apartment like professionals, checking every closet, under every piece of furniture, and behind every door. Emma stood in her destroyed living room, watching them tear apart the life she had built, piece by piece. Books were scattered across the floor, cushions were sliced open, and her carefully organized medicine cabinet had been emptied onto the bathroom floor. But they didn't find Marcus Romano. Emma had no idea where he had gone. One moment he was beside her, the next he had vanished like smoke. For a man who had been barely conscious 12 hours earlier, his disappearance was nothing short of miraculous. The leader, who Emma had heard the others call Vincent, was getting increasingly agitated. He kept checking his phone and glancing at his watch. Whoever had called him earlier was clearly not someone he wanted to disappoint. "He was here," Vincent said, more to himself than to Emma. "The blood trail leads right to this building." "Maybe he kept going," suggested the younger man with the dead eyes. "Could have used this place to rest and then moved on." Vincent shook his head. "Not with those injuries. Tommy saw him take at least 3 bullets to the chest. He wouldn't have made it another block without help. Emma tried to keep her expression neutral, but inside, her mind was racing. 3 bullets? She had only found 2 wounds. Had she missed something? Or had Vincent's information been wrong? "Miss Martinez," Vincent said, turning his attention back to her. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Have you seen this man?" He pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. Emma's heart nearly stopped. It was definitely Marcus, but this wasn't a mugshot or a driver's license photo. This looked like a surveillance photo taken from a distance. Marcus was wearing an expensive suit and getting out of a black limousine. He looked powerful, confident, and completely different from the broken man she had found in the parking garage. "I've never seen him before," Emma lied, hoping her voice didn't betray her. Vincent studied her face for what felt like an eternity. Emma forced herself to meet his gaze, drawing on every ounce of courage she possessed. Finally, he nodded to his men. "Let's go," he said. "We'll check the other apartments." As the 3 men filed out of her destroyed apartment, Vincent paused in the doorway. "Miss Martinez, if you happen to remember seeing anyone last night, you should call this number immediately." He handed her a business card. It was completely blank except for a phone number. "And Miss Martinez," Vincent added, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent chills down her spine. "Some people are very interested in finding Mr. Romano, the kind of people who don't like to be disappointed. If you're hiding something, now would be a good time to reconsider." Then they were gone, leaving Emma alone in the wreckage of her apartment. She waited 20 minutes before she dared to move. Her hands were shaking as she locked what remained of her front door and wedged a chair under the handle. Then she began searching for Marcus. She found him in the last place she would have thought to look. He was crammed into the narrow space behind her water heater in the utility closet, a space so small she wouldn't have believed a man his size could fit. His face was pale with pain, and fresh blood had soaked through his shirt. "Are you insane?" Emma whispered as she helped him out. "You could have torn open every stitch." "Better than being dead," Marcus replied weakly. "Thank you for not giving me up." "Who were those men? And who are you really?" Marcus leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. "It's better if you don't know." "Don't know?" Emma's voice rose with frustration and fear. "They destroyed my apartment looking for you. They knew where I work, what time I left the hospital. They have surveillance photos of you. And you think it's better if I don't know?" Marcus looked at her with those piercing green eyes. "Emma, I'm trying to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Before Marcus could answer, Emma's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and didn't recognize the number, but something about it looked familiar. Then she realized it was the same number on the business card Vincent had given her. "Don't answer it," Marcus said urgently. But Emma was tired of being afraid and confused. She answered the phone. "Hello? Miss Martinez." It was Vincent's voice. "I hope you've had some time to think about our conversation. I told you everything I know." "I don't think you did. In fact, I think you're lying to me, and that makes me very unhappy." Emma could hear the threat in his voice. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I want you to tell me where Marcus Romano is." "I don't know anyone by that name." There was a pause, and Emma heard Vincent talking to someone else. When he came back on the line, his voice was different, more respectful, almost nervous. "Miss Martinez, I'm going to give you some advice. My boss is on his way to see you personally. He should be there in about 15 minutes. If you're smart, you'll use that time to remember everything you can about last night." The line went dead. Emma looked at Marcus, who had gone very still. "Who's his boss?" Marcus closed his eyes. "Vincent works for the Castellano family. If his boss is coming personally..." He opened his eyes and looked at Emma with an expression she couldn't read. "Emma, you need to leave. Right now." What are you talking about? Pack a bag, get in your car, drive as far away from here as you can, and don't come back. I'm not leaving you here to die. I'm not Marcus Romano. Emma stared at him. What? My name is Detective Marcus Rivera. I'm undercover with the NYPD, investigating the Castellano crime family. Marcus Romano is Vincent's cousin. He was supposed to meet with a rival family last night to discuss territory disputes. Someone set him up, and he was supposed to die in that parking garage. Emma felt the world tilt around her. You're a police officer? I was in the garage collecting evidence when the shooting started. I got caught in the crossfire. When you found me, you saved the wrong man. The real Marcus Romano is probably at the bottom of the Hudson River by now. So why do they think you're him? Because we look similar enough, and it was dark. Vincent's men saw someone get shot and run. They assumed it was Romano, and they've been tracking the blood trail ever since. Emma's mind was reeling. So when this boss gets here, he's going to want to know why his nephew is still alive when he was supposed to be dead. And when he realizes I'm not actually Romano, we're both going to have a very big problem. A new sound cut through the air outside. Car engines, multiple car engines, all arriving at the same time. Emma went to her window and looked down at the street below. 5 black SUVs had pulled up in front of her building. Men in dark suits were getting out of each vehicle, and Emma counted at least 15 of them. They moved with military precision, surrounding the building and taking positions at every exit. From the center SUV stepped a man who was clearly in charge. He was older than the others, maybe in his 60s, with silver hair and an expensive overcoat. Even from 3 floors up, Emma could see that this was someone who commanded respect and fear in equal measure. "Is that him?" Emma whispered. Marcus looked out the window and his face went white. "That's Anthony Castellano, the head of the entire family. Your boss's boss. My boss's boss's boss. Emma, this man orders people killed for sport. If he thinks you helped his nephew's killers..." Emma didn't need him to finish the sentence. She could see it in Marcus's eyes. They were both dead. "Okay," Emma said, trying to think clearly despite the terror that was threatening to overwhelm her. "What do we do?" "We pray for a miracle." Heavy footsteps echoed in the stairwell outside Emma's apartment. Lots of footsteps coming up fast. Emma could hear doors opening on the floors below as the men searched each apartment. "Is there anywhere else to hide?" Marcus asked desperately. Emma looked around her small apartment. With 15 men searching the building, there was nowhere to go. The fire escape would be covered, the roof would be watched, and the front door was obviously not an option. "No," she said quietly. "There's nowhere to go." The footsteps reached her floor. Emma could hear Vincent's voice directing the other men, telling them which apartments to search first. They were being systematic, checking every unit. Marcus tried to stand up straight despite his injuries. "Emma, when they get here, tell them the truth. Tell them you're a nurse who helped someone who was hurt. Tell them you didn't know who I was." "What about you?" "I'm going to tell them who I really am and hope they believe me." "And if they don't?" Marcus didn't answer, but Emma could see the truth in his eyes. If Anthony Castellano didn't believe their story, if he thought for even a moment that they were involved in his nephew's death, they would both be killed without hesitation. The footsteps stopped outside Emma's door. "This one's already been searched," she heard Vincent say. "Search it again," came a voice that was cold and commanding. Anthony Castellano himself. "Yes, sir." The ruins of Emma's front door were pushed open, and Vincent entered with 2 other men. Behind them came Anthony Castellano, and Emma understood immediately why people feared this man. He had the kind of presence that filled a room, the kind of quiet authority that came from years of absolute power. His eyes swept the apartment, taking in every detail. When his gaze fell on Emma, she felt like he was looking directly into her soul. "Miss Martinez," he said in a voice that was surprisingly cultured. "I understand you've been having some visitors tonight." "Yes, sir," Emma said, not trusting herself to say more. "And I understand that you've been less than helpful to my associates." Emma glanced at Marcus, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "I've told them everything I know." Anthony Castellano smiled, but like Vincent's smile earlier, there was no warmth in it. "I'm sure you have. However, I have reason to believe that you might know more than you think you know." He gestured to one of his men, who stepped forward with what looked like a tablet computer. "You see, Miss Martinez, we live in an age of surveillance. Cameras on every corner, in every parking garage, in every building." Emma's heart sank as she realized what he was about to show her. "This is footage from the parking garage at St. Mary's Hospital, taken at approximately 2:20 a.m. this morning." He turned the tablet toward Emma, and she saw herself on the screen. The image was grainy and taken from a distance, but there was no mistaking what it showed. Emma kneeling beside Marcus in the parking garage, helping him to her car. "Now," Anthony Castellano continued, "would you care to revise your statement about not seeing anyone last night?" Emma looked at Marcus, who closed his eyes in resignation. There was no point in lying anymore. The evidence was right there in high definition. "I'm a nurse," Emma said quietly. "I saw someone who was hurt, and I helped him." "Yes, you did," Anthony Castellano agreed. "The question is, who did you help?" He gestured again, and Vincent stepped forward with his phone. On the screen was the same surveillance photo he had shown Emma earlier, but now she could see it more clearly. The man in the photo looked like Marcus, but the longer she studied it, the more differences she could see. The real Marcus Romano had been slightly shorter, with a different nose and a small scar on his chin. "This is my nephew, Marcus Romano," Anthony Castellano said. "He was supposed to meet with the Torino family last night to discuss a business arrangement. He never arrived at that meeting, and we found evidence that he was shot in the parking garage where you work." He paused, letting the implication sink in. "However, the man you helped is not my nephew." Emma felt Marcus tense beside her. This was the moment of truth. "So I'll ask you one more time, Miss Martinez. Who did you save last night?" Marcus stepped forward before Emma could answer. Despite his injuries, he stood as tall as he could, meeting Anthony Castellano's eyes directly. "My name is Detective Marcus Rivera, NYPD, he said clearly. "Badge number 4477. I've been working undercover for 8 months investigating your organization." The silence that followed was so complete that Emma could hear her own heartbeat. Vincent's hand moved toward his jacket, but Anthony Castellano raised a finger, and Vincent froze. "Detective Rivera," Anthony said thoughtfully. "How interesting." He walked slowly around Marcus, studying him like a scientist examining a specimen. "You know, Detective, you've caused me quite a bit of trouble tonight. My men have been searching half the city for someone they thought was my nephew." "Your nephew is dead," Marcus said bluntly. "The Torino family set him up. The meeting was a trap." Anthony's expression didn't change, but Emma saw something flicker in his eyes. "And how would you know that, Detective?" "Because I was there. I've been tracking Marcus Romano for weeks, waiting for him to lead me to something bigger. When he went to that meeting, I followed. I saw 3 cars waiting in the parking garage. When your nephew arrived, they opened fire immediately. He was dead before he hit the ground. And you? I got caught in the crossfire, took 3 rounds to the chest and barely made it out alive." Anthony turned to Emma. "And this is when our helpful nurse found you." "Yes," Emma said. "I thought I was saving an innocent person who'd been hurt." Anthony smiled that cold smile again. "There are very few innocent people in my world, Miss Martinez." He walked to Emma's broken window and looked down at the street where his men were still positioned. "Detective Rivera, I find myself in an interesting situation. You see, I have a police officer who has been investigating my business. and a nurse who saved his life. Under normal circumstances, you would both disappear tonight, and by tomorrow morning, no one would even remember your names. Emma felt Marcus move slightly closer to her, as if he could somehow protect her from what was coming. However, Anthony continued, these are not normal circumstances. You see, Detective, you've provided me with valuable information about my nephew's death. And Miss Martinez, you've demonstrated a loyalty that I find admirable. He turned back to face them. So, I'm going to make you both an offer. Emma didn't like the sound of that. Detective Rivera, you're going to return to your superiors and tell them that your investigation has hit a dead end. Marcus Romano is dead, killed by a rival family, and there's no evidence connecting the Castellano organization to any criminal activity. And if I refuse? Marcus asked. Then you won't leave this apartment alive. Neither will Miss Martinez, and tomorrow morning the newspapers will report that a corrupt police officer and his accomplice died in a drug deal gone wrong. Emma's blood ran cold at how casually he talked about murdering them both. What about Emma? Marcus asked. She's not part of this. Actually, Detective, she became part of this the moment she decided to help you. But I'm prepared to be generous. Anthony looked at Emma. Miss Martinez, you're going to continue working at the hospital as if nothing happened. You will never speak of last night to anyone, and in return, you'll be under my protection. Your protection? Emma asked. The Torino family knows that someone helped Marcus Romano's killer escape. They'll be looking for that person. If they find you before my people do, they won't be as understanding as I am. The reality of her situation hit Emma like a physical blow. She wasn't just caught between the police and one crime family. She was caught between two crime families, both of which had reasons to want her dead. And if I agree to your terms? She asked. Then you'll be safe? You have my word. Marcus laughed bitterly. The word of a crime boss. Anthony's eyes went cold. Detective, my word is more valuable than any contract or legal document. When I give my word, people can depend on it. Can you say the same about your police department? How many innocent people have they failed to protect? Emma had to admit he had a point. She'd seen too many victims come through the hospital, people who had called the police for help, but hadn't received it in time. I need to know something, Emma said. Your nephew, Marcus Romano, what kind of person was he? Anthony raised an eyebrow. Why do you ask? Because I need to know if I saved the right person after all. Anthony was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, My nephew was a soldier in my organization. He followed orders and he protected the family. But he was also a man who enjoyed hurting people. He had particular appetites that I found distasteful. Emma understood the implication. Marcus Romano had been a predator. Detective Rivera, on the other hand, Anthony continued, seems to be a man who risks his life to protect innocent people, even when those people are strangers. Emma looked at Marcus, who was watching her carefully. She thought about the choice she had made in the parking garage. She had seen someone who was hurt, and she had helped them. She hadn't known who he was or what he represented. She had simply done what she thought was right. What happens to the investigation into your organization? She asked. There are other detectives, other investigations, Marcus said. The work will continue. Just not by you. No, not by me. Emma made her decision. I agree to your terms, Mr. Castellano, but I have conditions. Anthony looked surprised. Conditions? Detective Rivera goes free, completely free. No retaliation, no revenge. He walks away from this and lives his life. And? I want your word that you'll never ask me to do anything that goes against my oath as a nurse. I won't help you hurt people. Anthony studied her for a long moment. You have courage, Miss Martinez. I respect that. He walked to Marcus and extended his hand. Detective, do we have an agreement? Marcus looked at the hand for a moment, then shook it. We have an agreement. Anthony turned to Emma. Miss Martinez, you have my word. Detective Rivera will not be harmed, and you will never be asked to compromise your principles." He gestured to Vincent, who looked disappointed, but nodded. "Vincent, have your men stand down. The search is over." As the men filed out of the apartment, Anthony paused at the door. "Miss Martinez, someone will contact you tomorrow about repairs to your apartment. Consider it a gesture of goodwill." "And the Torino family?" Emma asked. "Leave that to me." Then he was gone. And Emma was alone with Marcus. They stood in silence for several minutes, both trying to process what had just happened. Finally, Marcus spoke. "You could have let him kill me. It would have been easier." "I'm a nurse," Emma said simply. "I don't let people die if I can help it." "Even corrupt cops who lie to you?" "You're not corrupt. You were doing your job." Marcus smiled for the first time since she had found him. "How do you know I'm not corrupt?" "Because Anthony Castellano offered you a choice between money and freedom, and you chose freedom. A corrupt cop would have asked about the money." Marcus laughed, wincing as the movement pulled at his stitches. "You're probably right." Emma looked around her destroyed apartment. Everything she owned was damaged or broken, but somehow she felt like she had gained something more valuable than what she had lost. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now you go back to saving lives, and I go back to catching bad guys. Just different bad guys." "And we pretend this never happened?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Emma, what happened here tonight? You saved more than just my life. You saved who I am. I was starting to forget why I became a cop in the first place." Emma didn't know what to say to that. "I have to go," Marcus said. "There are people who will be worried about me, and I need to report in. Your injuries will heal, thanks to you." Marcus walked to the door, then turned back. "Emma, if you ever need anything at all, you call this number." He handed her a piece of paper with a phone number written on it. "What is it?" "My real number, not the detective bureau, not a department line. My personal phone. Day or night you call and I'll answer." Emma took the paper. "What if Anthony Castellano finds out we're in contact?" "Then I guess we'll figure out how to handle that when it happens." Marcus smiled again. "Besides, something tells me you're pretty good in a crisis." After he left, Emma stood in her ruined apartment and thought about the choices she had made. She had saved a stranger's life, lied to dangerous men, and made a deal with a crime boss. 6 months ago, she would never have imagined herself capable of any of it. But as she looked out her window at the normal, quiet street below, Emma realized something important. Sometimes the right choice wasn't the safe choice. Sometimes doing good meant taking risks that other people wouldn't take. She picked up her phone and called her supervisor at the hospital. "Hi, it's Emma. I know it's my day off, but I was wondering if you need any extra help today. I feel like saving some lives." As she got ready for what would probably be the most normal day she'd had in 24 hours, Emma smiled. She had saved the wrong man. But somehow, everything had turned out exactly right. 3 weeks later, Emma was working her usual shift when she saw the news report on the television in the hospital waiting room. Anthony Castellano had been found dead in his home, apparently the victim of a heart attack. The reporter mentioned that his death marked the end of one of the city's most powerful crime families. Emma wondered if it had really been a heart attack. But she knew she would probably never know for sure. Some questions were better left unanswered. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Saw the news. Some problems solve themselves. Hope you're staying safe. M." Emma smiled and deleted the message. Marcus Rivera was right. Some problems did solve themselves, and sometimes saving the wrong person turned out to be exactly the right thing to do. The rain was falling again as Emma finished her shift and walked to the parking garage. But this time she wasn't afraid. She had learned something important about herself in that parking garage 3 weeks ago. She was stronger than she had ever imagined. And sometimes, that was enough.